Hey there again. I wanted to talk to you folks today about lining tanks. So you used to see a lot of galvanized steel tanks. There's still a few of them around. They get pretty rusted and in rough shape. And then you would see painted steel tanks, which would have an epoxy paint. And then you see glass lined steel tanks. I'm not sure what the process looks like. I don't know, but they paint this material on it, bake it, and what's left after the baking process is like glass on the tank, on the steel plates. I've dealt with all three. I've had a couple of galvanized tanks that have literally had rust holes size of a silver dollar in them. First one that I saw, we had one that was the old galvanized steel tank, really bad shape. The city decided they're going to replace it with a glass line tank. When the contractors came to pull that old tank down, and when they got it unbolted and they grabbed a hold of it with a crane and went to move it, it just collapsed on itself, like the bottom just, and them moving it just a little bit caused it to crumple. It was in pretty bad shape. And then they erected the new steel tank, the new glass line steel tank, and now we got this new tank. Okay. Well, then another little system that I was managing had a similar galvanized steel tank. It was about the same dimensions as far as diameter. It's like 28 feet across, I think. It was only about half the height. It had started developing those like rust bubbles around the bottom. And so the process to line it, contractors come in, and of course you got to drain your tank and bypass it so you can still keep running the system. They get inside it with sandblasters and they blast the inside of the tank. And as they're blasting it, those rust bubbles would literally just blow out inch and a half diameter rust holes all around the bottom of this tank. And then they blasted the outside lightly. They didn't like go crazy with the outside, just enough to kind of smooth off the surface and prep it to accept the new spray on liner. But inside, they blasted the heck out of it. Get all the nooks, crannies, and make sure everything is really clean and prepped. Well, so they stepped back outside and they literally took duct tape and taped over the holes. And I walked up to the tank while the contractors were inside. They had whip blasted it, they had taped it off, and the crew lead was inside the tank. He had just started spraying the new liner. Now, the liner that we were using was an epoxy-based liner product made by Rhino Liner that does like truck bed liners. But this product was specifically made and developed for potable water. It's AWWA compliant. So I walked up to the tank, and the guy had started spraying next to the door, working his way around the tank, and he was about halfway around the tank. And so he'd been spraying this stuff for, maybe 15 minutes or so, working his way, maybe 20 minutes, I don't know, but working his way around the tank. He's about halfway around. And one of his workers was standing there, and I asked him, how long does it take to cure? How long, do you know it's cure? And he walks over to the tank next to the door there where he'd started, and he peels off one of the duct tape patches. And so you see steel with a hole full of the epoxy liner. He peels the duct tape off, takes his pocket knife out, flicks it open, and bing, bing, bing on the epoxy plug. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, yeah, it's good. Wow. Literally 15-20 minutes after he had sprayed it, it is sealed and plugged this hole and made a new impervious layer. When those guys got done spraying the inside of that tank with the product, they came outside and they put between 1/4 and 1/2 inch on the inside of the tank. On the outside, they sprayed a thin, maybe like a 1/16 inch layer, just enough to cover everything and put a coating on it, protect it from the weather. And it's actually two products that they have. The one product is got a blue color to it, and it's the potable water variety. And then there is a product that is for wastewater, and it's got kind of a yellowish color to it. And the one with the yellowish color is designed to resist hydrogen sulfide. You look at a concrete wastewater, like a catch basin, where water's rushing in it and hydrogen sulfide gas is kind of floating around in there, and above the water line, that hydrogen sulfide is eating out the concrete. Like, it's just dissolving the concrete. And so they'll go in and line that box, and that liner will keep the hydrogen sulfide at bay. It won't let it attack the wall of your tank anymore. And because that epoxy stuff is real thick and sticky, they can put 2 or 3 layers on the bad spot, build it back out to where it's got the same profile as the rest of the wall, and then they put a final layer on it to coat the entire thing, protect everything. I think that like the whole thing, the whole system they have is like one base chemical, and then they add a second chemical, and when they mix it up, that makes it be the AWWA water compliant, or this other chemical that makes that same base be the hydrogen sulfide resisting. But then the base itself is what they just spray for the exterior. Again, I'm not an expert on their process, but you can go and check out Rhino-Liner Pipeliner products, and they'll give you all the literature and explain it. Anyway, back to the story. So they painted the inside of this tank. The guy peels the duct tape off. Dink, dink. Yep, we're good to go. When they got done spraying the inside, I mean, they did floor, walls, ceiling, the whole bit. The door that bolts back to the tank, they put tape around the bolt holes, and then sprayed it good, and then cut the material and pulled the tape back away so that you had a nice, clean place to bolt it to, because it'd be a rubber O-ring that goes on the door. So when they got done, though, all of the old bolts that were bolting the tank panels together were completely encapsulated. The ladder inside had started rusting, and the rungs were getting a little bit flimsy. They sprayed the ladder real heavy, and once it cured hard, that ladder was rock solid. I mean, literally, I was amazed. I climbed in the tank when they first got it cleaned out and had vented it. We climbed inside to have a look around, and you could feel that the ladder was feeling a little bit compromised. And then 2 days later, when everything was done and cured, and they're like, all right, you can use the tank again. And we climbed back in there doing inspection. The ladder felt like a brand new ladder. It was just solid as a brand new one. So they got the inside painted. They went back outside, peeled all the tape off, kind of, maybe, I don't know, hit it with a little sandpaper, maybe sandblasted a few spots, make sure it was all touched up like they wanted. And then they hit the outside with a thin layer of that base material, and it looked like a brand new tank. It looked like a brand new steel tank had just been erected out of the bones of that old tank. And I mean, when they were done, essentially, you had a 1/4 inch thick, rigid plastic tank inside that old metal tank. So the metal tank just became a framework for this new plastic tank that was built inside it. It was very impressive. I went back about 2 or 3 years after the original install, and still looks in good shape. And they warranty their product for 50 years. I asked the guy why the 50-year mark. He said, honestly, we don't know how long it'll last. We've been installing them for 50 years, and we haven't had to go back to one yet. So we figured, all right, 50 years is a good thing to say in the literature. We know they're good for 50 years. They were doing it like up north and out, I guess, in the east. And we just, like, the product line hadn't expanded to the south so much, so we didn't hear about it down here. But the guy told me that, yeah, we've been installing these for 50 years, and we haven't had to go back to one yet. So I was very impressed. We used it on a couple of other projects, used it in a wastewater project, the hydrogen sulfide variant, and used it in another water tank that we were redoing. Now, that second water tank was a painted steel tank. It had been in place for, I don't know, 20 years, I think. And the paint was starting to degrade on the inside, starting to flake off. The tank wasn't in bad shape yet, but with the paint starting to want to peel, figured now's a good time as any. If we go ahead and have the inside of this tank spray with this now, then this thing will last well past all of our retirement. And so they got in there and cleaned it out and blasted it and sprayed that liner in. And that's been 4 or 5 years ago, and that tank still looks brand new inside. If you have an old tank that needs a liner in it, that is definitely an option that I would recommend you looking at. I appreciate you guys. God bless y'all. Have a good day. Oh, and remember, like and subscribe.